Welcome back to the After Action Reset. I'm Steve Geiger. Every week we talk about stress, burnout, emotional overload, nervous system health, and how to get back to baseline. Because sometimes the problem isn't what you think it is. Sometimes the thing you've been blaming yourself for has a completely different explanation. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. Some people don't have an anger problem. Let me start with that. They simply have an overload problem. There's a difference. Because when you've been carrying too much for too long, small things stop feeling small. The sock on the floor isn't just a sock. The dirty dish in the sink isn't just a dish. The slow driver in front of you isn't just somebody going 3 miles under the speed limit. Somehow, in that moment, they have become a direct threat to everything you believe in. You're behind the wheel thinking, "Sir, this is a road. We move here." And the truth is, you're not really angry at the driver. You're angry at the 12 things that happened before the driver. You're angry at the email you woke up to, the kid who couldn't find their shoes, the meeting that should have been an email, the bill you forgot that was due, the fact that you slept only 6 hours the night before. But your body acts like you spent the night fighting a bear. Then somebody leaves one cabinet door open, and suddenly you're standing in the kitchen like a detective at a crime scene. Who did this? Nobody answers. The whole house just goes quiet. Even the dog looks at you nervously. That's what overload can look like. It doesn't always look like crying. It doesn't always look like collapsing. Sometimes it looks like irritation, sarcasm, short answers, a tone you didn't mean to use, a reaction that feels too big for the moment. And then afterward, you feel guilty because once the pressure drops, you realize the situation didn't deserve the reaction. The spilled drink wasn't a betrayal. The missing remote wasn't a personal attack. Your spouse asking a question wasn't an interrogation. But in the moment, your body responded like the final straw had just landed. That phrase matters, the final straw, because nobody loses it over just one straw. They lose it because they've been carrying the rest of the load for days, weeks, sometimes years. And then one small thing lands on top of it. That's why people say, "I don't know why I reacted like that." Actually, you may know why. You're just looking at the wrong moment. You're looking at the last 30 seconds. But the reaction may have been building since Tuesday, maybe longer. Think about how this happens. You wake up already tired. You check your phone before your feet even hit the floor. There are messages, there are notifications, there's news, you have work problems, family problems, a reminder that you forgot something yesterday. Your brain has already entered the day at a sprint. Then you actually start moving. Coffee, lunches, traffic, there are deadlines, you have appointments, there's noise everywhere, questions, decisions. By noon, you've already answered 47 small questions, and half of them were variations of, "Where's the thing that is directly in front of me?" Parents know exactly what I'm talking about here. A child can stand 6 inches away from their backpack, look directly at it, and then ask you, "Where's my backpack?" At that point, you're not responding to the backpack issue. You're responding to the entire mental load of being responsible for another human being who may one day operate a motor vehicle. That's a sobering thought. But humor aside, this is where people start misunderstanding themselves. They say, "I'm becoming an angry person. I have no patience anymore. I'm turning into someone I don't like." Maybe, but maybe anger isn't the whole story. Maybe irritation is the smoke and overload is the fire. Maybe the problem isn't that you suddenly became cruel. Maybe your capacity has been shrinking while your responsibilities stayed the same. Imagine carrying a cup filled all the way to the top. You can walk carefully, you can manage it, but every additional drop creates a spill. Now, the spill looks dramatic, but the real issue is that the cup had no room left. That's what happens emotionally. When you have margin, you can absorb inconvenience. A delay is annoying, but manageable. A mistake is frustrating, of course, but not catastrophic. A child spills juice, and you grab a towel. When you have no margin, the same spilled juice feels like the collapse of Western civilization. You're staring at the floor thinking, this house will never recover. Again, it's not the juice. It's the absence of capacity. And capacity changes. It changes with sleep, stress, grief, alcohol, drugs, workload, physical pain, conflict, hormones, financial pressure, loneliness, the amount of support you have, the amount of noise around you, and how long you've been expected to keep functioning without a real break. That doesn't excuse harmful behavior. That's not what I'm saying. Let me be very clear about that. Being overloaded does not give us permission to mistreat people. It doesn't make yelling acceptable. It doesn't erase responsibility. Understanding the reason behind a reaction is not the same as justifying it. It gives us a place to intervene. Because if you believe the entire problem is, I'm just an angry person, of course, you may feel ashamed, hopeless, defective. But if you recognize my system is overloaded, my patience is low, and I'm reacting from depletion, now there are things you can work on. You can create that space. You can address the sleep issue. You can reduce the stimulation. You can ask for help. You can catch the warning signs earlier. You can repair the damage when you get it wrong. And you can stop treating every bad moment like proof that you are a bad person. That distinction matters. Because shame usually makes the cycle worse. You snap, then you feel guilty. Then you criticize yourself. Then you carry more stress. Then your capacity gets even smaller. Then, guess what? You snap again. That's how one reaction turns into an identity. And I don't want that for you. I want you to understand what may be happening before you decide who you are. So let me ask you something. What are your early warning signs? Not the explosion. What happens before it? Does your jaw tighten? Do your shoulders rise? Do you start answering with one word? Do normal sounds suddenly feel too loud? Does somebody chewing near you become a national emergency? You're sitting there thinking, has this person always chewed like a wood chipper? This is information for us. Your body may be telling you that your capacity is gone. Some people notice they start moving faster, cleaning more, driving more aggressively, closing cabinets with a little more enthusiasm than necessary. Not slamming them, of course, just placing them shut with conviction. Others might go quiet or withdraw. Some stop communicating. Then the pressure eventually leaks out sideways. The goal is to catch the pattern before the leak becomes an explosion. Because anger often gives us warning signs. Irritation, for example, is a warning. Restlessness is a warning. That feeling that everybody needs to stop talking for 5 minutes, that is definitely a warning. The question is whether or not we listen to those warnings, or whether we keep pushing until the smallest inconvenience becomes the enemy. In the next part, we're going to go deeper into what happens when your emotional threshold gets lower, why overload makes your brain treat minor frustrations like major threats, and how this starts affecting your marriage, your children, even your work, and the way you ultimately see yourself. Because the problem is rarely the small thing. The small thing just reveals how much pressure was already there. Once your emotional threshold gets low, your brain starts treating small frustrations like bigger threats. Not because the frustration actually became dangerous, because your capacity to absorb it got smaller. Think about a smoke detector. A good smoke detector is supposed to alert you when there's a fire. But if it becomes too sensitive, now it goes off because you just made toast. There is no actual emergency. The house isn't burning down. You just got a little ambitious with the sourdough. But the alarm doesn't know the difference. It detects smoke and reacts. That's what chronic overload can do to your emotional system. The alarm becomes more sensitive. A minor inconvenience creates a major response. A simple question sounds like criticism. A delay feels disrespectful. A mistake feels intentional. A child asking for something at the wrong time feels like one demand too many. And your body reacts before your thinking mind has time to catch up. This is important for us to understand, because many reactions begin physically before they become verbal. Your heart rate changes, your muscles tighten, your breathing gets shallow, your focus narrows. Your brain starts preparing for conflict. Then someone says, "Why are you getting so upset?" Which, let's be honest, has probably never calmed anyone down in the history of human civilization. Nobody hears "calm down" and then thinks, "You know what? Excellent point. I hadn't considered calming down." Usually that sentence alone adds another log to the fire. But underneath the humor, there is something real happening. When you're overloaded, your brain becomes less flexible. You have less access to patience, less access to perspective, less access to humor, less access to the part of you that can pause and say, "This is annoying, but it's not an emergency." That's why sleep matters so much. A tired brain is an impatient brain. After a poor night of sleep, normal problems feel much heavier. Noise feels louder. Traffic will feel slower. People seem more irritating. Even your phone charger starts acting disrespectful. You plug it in, nothing happens. You flip it around, still nothing. Now you're questioning the integrity of the entire electronic industry. 5 minutes later, however, you realize the wall plug wasn't connected. That's not the moment to evaluate your emotional stability. That's the moment to go to bed. Sleep deprivation doesn't create every anger problem, but it lowers the amount of stress you can carry before reacting. The same thing happens with hunger. The same thing happens with pain, alcohol, constant noise, too much caffeine, too little movement, and being available to everybody at all times. There's a reason people say they're running on empty. Empty systems don't respond well with additional demands. And yet, many people keep expecting themselves to function at full capacity while living with no recovery. They work all day, they come home, handle family responsibilities, answer the messages, watch the news, scroll through arguments between strangers online, stay up way too late, then wake up tired, then wonder why they snapped because somebody put the milk back with 1 teaspoon left in the container. Who does that? Just finish the milk. Now I have to make an executive decision about whether this qualifies as milk. That's the kind of situation that tests a person. But again, the milk isn't the real problem. The milk is just the messenger. Relationships often take the biggest hit because home is where people finally drop their guard. You may keep it all together all day at work. After all, you're a professional. You're patient. You're calm. Someone asks you the same question 3 times and you answer politely 3 times. Then you walk through the front door, your spouse asks you, "What do you want for dinner?" And suddenly the question feels impossible, overwhelming. You're thinking, "I've made decisions all day long. I don't care. Pick food, any food. We have survived this long." Come on. You can take it out. That's called decision fatigue. Every decision uses some mental energy, from what you're going to wear, what you want to eat, what to answer, what to prioritize, what problems come first, what can wait, how to respond. By the time you get home, you may not have much left. Then the people closest to you receive the least patient version of you. Not because you love them any less, because you feel safest around them. That explains the pattern. Now, it doesn't make it fair. Your spouse shouldn't become the emotional dumping ground for everything you held in all day long. Your children shouldn't have to guess which version of you walked through the front door. Your family shouldn't need to read your face like a weather report. Dad looks cloudy, chance of thunderstorms. Avoid asking about homework. That kind of unpredictability creates tension in a home. Kids especially notice more than adults realize. They may not understand chronic stress. They may not know what overload means, but they understand tone. They understand facial expressions. They understand when a room suddenly feels unsafe. And sometimes the child isn't afraid because you're a bad parent. They're uncertain because they don't know what will cause the next reaction. That can be hard to hear. I get it. But it matters because the goal isn't to shame. The goal is awareness. Shame says you're a terrible person. Awareness says this pattern is hurting people and it needs to change. Those are not the same message. One attacks your identity. The other gives you responsibility, and responsibility is where change begins. Work can create the same pattern. You may become increasingly frustrated with coworkers. You start assuming people are incompetent. Every small email seems irritating. Every meeting feels pointless. Every new assignment feels personal. And sometimes, yes, the meeting actually should have been an email. We need to acknowledge reality. There are meetings where 20 adults gather for 45 minutes to confirm something that could have been written in 3 sentences. That's not emotional dysregulation. That's a hostage situation with a PowerPoint. But when everything starts feeling unbearable, that's worth noticing. If every person seems stupid, every request feels unreasonable, every sound bothers you, and every inconvenience feels like disrespect, there is one common denominator. You. Not because everything is your fault, because your internal condition is affecting how you interpret the world around you. When you're calm, you give people the benefit of the doubt. When you're overloaded, you assign motives. They did that because they don't respect me. She said that because she's trying to start something with me. He left that there because he expects me to handle it. That may be the case. Or maybe he forgot. Maybe she was distracted. Maybe the person driving slowly in front of you is lost. Maybe the cashier is having a terrible day. Maybe your child spilled the drink because children spill drinks. They're basically tiny people with unreliable hands. Perspective returns when capacity returns. That's why the rest is not just about comfort. It affects judgment. It affects communication, empathy, impulse control. And this cycle can become especially dangerous when people use alcohol to come down from stress. They say, I just need something to take the edge off. I, of all people, understand that thinking. But the problem is that alcohol may temporarily quiet the discomfort while making sleep, mood, patience, and emotional regulation worse in the long run. Now, the pressure is still there, but your capacity to manage it keeps shrinking. That, again, creates a cycle. Stress, relief, poor recovery, low patience, more conflict, more guilt, more stress, and eventually the person no longer knows whether they're drinking because they're angry or angry because of what the drinking is doing to their life. That's one reason honesty matters. You have to be willing to look at what is actually lowering your threshold, not what you wish was happening, but what is really happening. How much are you sleeping? How often are you drinking? How much time do you spend alone with your thoughts? How much stimulation are you consuming? How much resentment are you carrying? How many conversations are you avoiding? How long have you been telling everybody, I'm fine, when really you're not fine? Because suppressed pressure doesn't disappear. It leaks. It leaks into your voice. It leaks into your driving, your parenting, your marriage, your body, the decisions you make, and eventually into the way you see yourself. You start believing this is just who I am now. No, a pattern is not an identity. A reaction is not a personality. A difficult season doesn't get to define the rest of your life. But you do have to stop pretending the pattern will fix itself. In the next part, we're going to talk about what to do when you feel the pressure rising, how to interrupt the reaction before it takes over, and how to repair things when you get it wrong. And we're going to cover how to rebuild enough margin that small things can become small again. So here we go. What do you do? What do you do when you feel the pressure rising? Because as I said before, awareness matters. But awareness without action just means you know exactly why you are about to lose your mind. That's not the goal. The goal is to catch the reaction early enough that you still have a chance, you still have a choice. And the first step is learning your warning signs. Not the explosion, the moments before it. Again, maybe your jaw tightens, maybe your shoulders rise, maybe your breathing changes and becomes more shallow. Maybe you start moving faster. Maybe every sound suddenly becomes unbearable. The television is too loud, the dog is licking something, somebody is chewing, a drawer is opening and closing, and for reasons you can't explain, you're now one spoon drop away from complete personality change. That's the moment to pay attention. Not because you're weak, because your body is giving you information. It's telling you, my capacity is almost gone. And when you notice that, the first thing to do is pause. Not forever, not for an hour. Sometimes 30 seconds is enough. Step away if you can. Take a slow breath, then take another slow breath. Consciously think about dropping your shoulders. Relax your jaw. Put both feet on the floor. Look around the room. Remind yourself, yes, this is frustrating, but it's not an emergency. That sentence can save you a lot of damage. Because when you're overloaded, your body may react as if something dangerous is happening. It doesn't know the difference between true survival and your kid chewing too loudly or your coworker sending you nonstop emails. But the truth may be someone did in fact leave a wet towel on the bed. Annoying, yes, absolutely. A threat to national security? Probably not. You don't need to pretend the situation doesn't bother you. You just need enough space between the feeling and the reaction to choose what happens next. That space is where control lives. Not in never getting angry, not in becoming emotionless, not in acting calm while internally fantasizing about launching the laundry basket into traffic. Control is recognizing the emotion and deciding that that emotion doesn't get full command. Of course, you can feel angry without becoming cruel. You can feel frustrated without humiliating somebody. You can feel overwhelmed without making everybody else pay for it. That's emotional discipline. And sometimes the most disciplined sentence you can say is, I need a minute before I respond. That's not avoidance, that is prevention. It's much easier to take 5 minutes now than to spend 5 days repairing something you said in 5 seconds. Now, what if you already reacted? Because we are human. You're going to get it wrong sometimes. We all do. You're going to use the wrong tone. You're going to overreact. You may say something you regret. The answer isn't pretending it didn't happen. And it's definitely not offering one of those fake apologies. You know the kind I'm talking about. I'm sorry you felt that way. That's not an apology. That's customer service language for, I still think I was right. A real repair sounds like this. I overreacted. My response was bigger than the actual situation. You didn't deserve the way I spoke to you. I was overwhelmed. Now again, that doesn't excuse it. I am sorry, that matters, especially with children. A lot of parents think apologizing weakens their authority. Let me tell you, it doesn't. It teaches accountability. It shows your child that being an adult doesn't mean pretending you are never wrong. It means taking responsibility when you are. And if your child saw you lose control, let them see you repair it too. That teaches something even more powerful. It teaches them that conflict doesn't have to destroy connection. It teaches them that mistakes can be addressed. And it teaches them that love includes ownership. The same is true in marriage. Don't wait until resentment has been building for 6 months, then unload every grievance since the Clinton administration. Talk earlier, talk smaller, talk before the pressure turns every disagreement into a courtroom trial. And be specific. Don't say, you never help. Say, I'm overloaded, and I need you to handle dinner and bedtime tonight. Don't say, nobody appreciates me. Say, I've been carrying too much, and I need us to divide this up differently. Specific requests are easier to respond to than emotional indictments. People can't solve a problem they don't understand. And no, they shouldn't need a PowerPoint presentation every single time. But clear communication is still better than expecting someone to read your mind. Most people are not mind readers. Some of us can barely read the instructions on furniture. So say what you need. The next part is rebuilding margin, because if your cup stays filled to the top, you will keep spilling. You can't breathe your way out of life that has no room left in it. Breathing helps. I love breathing. Pausing helps. Walking helps. But eventually something has to change. You may need more sleep. You may need fewer commitments. You may need to stop answering every single message immediately. You may need to reduce alcohol use. You may need to stop volunteering for responsibilities nobody asked you to carry. You may need one evening a week where you're not available to solve everybody's problems. You may just need to learn how to say no. And no can be very difficult for people who have built their identity around being dependable, because saying no can feel selfish. But saying yes to everything often means giving everybody the most exhausted version of you. That's not sustainable. Margin is not laziness. Margin is capacity. It's what allows you to absorb the unexpected without falling apart. It's the difference between a child spilling milk and you seeing the event for what it actually is, a spill. Not proof that nobody respects you, not proof that the house is out of control, not the final chapter in the collapse of civilization. Just milk. So grab a towel. Life continues. That is what recovery gives back to you. Perspective. Small things become small again. The sound of someone chewing stops feeling like psychological warfare. Traffic becomes inconvenient, not personal. A mistake becomes something to correct, not something to punish. You get to access humor again, patience, choice. And that doesn't happen because your life becomes perfect. It happens because you stop demanding that your body survive indefinitely without recovery. You start respecting your limits before they become explosions. You stop waiting until you're completely empty to admit you need help. And you stop confusing endurance with health. If this episode describes you, I want you to hear this clearly. You're not automatically an angry person. You may be a tired person, an overwhelmed person, a hurt person, a person carrying resentment, a person who has been functioning without enough support. That doesn't remove your responsibility, but it does mean you are not hopeless. Patterns can change. Thresholds can improve. Relationships can heal. You can learn to recognize the warning signs sooner. You can create more room. You can apologize when you miss it. You can ask for help before the pressure becomes damage. And you can become someone who feels anger without letting anger decide who you are. That's the reset. Not perfection, awareness, responsibility, practice, repair, and the willingness to begin again. If this conversation helped you, follow the After Action Reset so next week's episode is already waiting for you. You can also listen to the full podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you need something practical to help you start, I have 2 free resources available. The 10-minute reset and You're Not Lazy, You're Overloaded. You can find the podcast, the free PDFs, and all the After Action Reset resource materials that I spoke about through my Beacons page. It's beacons.ai/the After Action Reset. Please take care of yourselves. Take care of the people you love. And remember, sometimes the small thing is not the real problem. Sometimes it's simply the moment that reveals how much pressure you were already carrying. Pause, create some space, repair what needs repairing, and keep moving forward. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.